Back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Taylor Ferns. Of course, did some racing this past weekend at IRP. Yeah, it's good to call it IRP again.
For sure.
USAC Silver Crown Series. How's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for taking the time again to sit down and chat with me, and excited to talk about the race last Friday and then also the upcoming race season.
Yeah, so let's talk about that race last Friday. Let's get right into it. Going into that race, overall, put on a great performance. Obviously, not the win that you wanted, but overall a pretty good finish on the night.
Thanks. Yeah. Obviously it's always a good night, at least when you can get on podium and compete with the guys like Cody Swanson and Bobby Santos. Obviously two of the best within open wheel racing, with my personal opinion. So obviously always a good night when you can finish up front with those guys, but obviously nothing's better than getting that elusive W, right? So I think obviously before last night, my best finish ever in the Silver Crown car was fourth place, which I had at Eldora, what feels like eons ago, but that was 9 years ago. So obviously Friday night we surpassed my overall best finish in a USAC Silver Crown car. But obviously going for that win, I know that we have a car to do it. I know that I'm capable of winning and competing with the best of the best. But it is always a privilege to run up front with those guys, because obviously Silver Crown races, they're 100 laps, anything goes. And I kind of like to say it's like going to war, because anything can happen, right, within that span of time. So overall, great run. I know that we have more to give, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
So you talk about that. Of course, remind the viewer what is your now best career finish for people that might not remember?
So at least within the USAC Silver Crown Series, my best finish is third, which is the highest finishing female in USAC Silver Crown history, and the first podium finish by a female in USAC Silver Crown history. But outside of that, like I like to say, I'm a winner. Like I've won pavement non-wing sprint car races. I was the first female to win a sprint car race at Berlin last September. I've won wing 410, dirt sprint car races, midget races, pretty much anything that I get my hands in, I've been successful in. Not to be cocky or arrogant or anything, but people who don't know that about me, like I'm a winner. So I expect when I go out on the track to compete for the win. And I feel like with the Silver Crown car, we're finally at that point to where each time we go to the track, like I feel like we could run up front. So looking forward to the rest of the races. I know our next USAC Silver Crown race is on the 24th of June at Madison. So we'll see what we have to give there. And then overall, like my next sprint car race is at Plymouth on the 10th. And then we go back to Berlin on the 11th, which is the next day. So excited to get going.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a fun place I got to see I got to see the Silver Crown cars last year. Of course, if you remember, Taylor was on our show in October when, of course, after I went to Toledo for that race. And oh my goodness, when you see these cars in person, they are something else. Going out there, and for people that might not know what these cars are like, kind of explain to the audience about what this car is, what this series is like for people that may not know.
Yeah, so the Silver Crown cars, I feel like from an objective point of view, are kind of viewed as like the upper echelon of the USAC open wheel cars. If you kind of want to look at it that way, like it's midget sprint from a tier way, like midget sprint cars, and then the Silver Crown cars. What makes them so unique is it's 100 lap races, so longer than your standard 30, 40, 50 lapper. And then also the Silver Crown cars have the ability to start using a starter. So for instance, like my dad will start the car while I'm sitting in neutral, and then I have the ability to pull in the clutch, lock the car into gear, and then roll off on my own. So that's really what makes these cars super unique as far as like an open wheel car goes, which I guess is maybe similar to like an Indy car or Formula car, because I know sometimes like they have to start on their own too, or they have starters as well. So that's really kind of the history behind it, other than like the 100 laps. It's a bit of a heavier car compared to a sprint car or a midget. They're about 1,700 pounds with driver in it. I think like our overall weight we have to meet is like 1675 or something around those lines. And then it has a 360 engine in it. So a smaller engine than a full size sprint car. So that's also what makes them unique because they are bigger than a sprint car, but they also have a smaller engine. So, or smaller than your standard 410.
Mhm. Yeah. So going out, I know that we also discussed last time that, you're kind of, you're racing, but your professional career is also getting involved in your racing a little bit, of course. For people that, excuse me, for people that live in the state of Michigan, everybody knows, of course, who you work for, the Sam Bernstein Law Firm, one of the most recognizable law firms in the entire country, and of course in Michigan as well. So going in there, of course, what's that been like? And I know those, and since when we talked last time, I know those guys were excited to see um, their name on your car. And of course, you were also in that commercial last year. You rolling around the Berlin Raceway.
Yeah, so I like to joke around and say I feel like the Bernsteins didn't know that what they were getting into when they hired me because obviously they sponsor my car, which I'm super grateful for. As I mentioned in our prior interviews, they're an overall great family, the most genuine people you'll ever meet. But at the same time, obviously they sponsor my car, and so they become more exposed to the motorsports world. But also, their family is really into the Formula One Drive to Survive series on Netflix. And so it's kind of like overlapped a lot, somewhat, at least with my racing. And they've gotten into it even more. Mark kind of goes around and jokes that I'm like the Max Verstappen of our office.
Kind of funny.
So, yeah, that's how they get on. And then we got very positive, receptive feedback from the racing commercial. So I feel like they're really into it. They enjoy it. I'm trying to get them to go out to a race. But they did enjoy their time at at Berlin when we did shoot the commercial there. So we're overall, they're learning more about racing too. Which, like I said, I don't think that they realize what they are getting into, and kind of I feel like view racing almost as like a niche, but it's so expansive in ways. Like I was telling our marketing girl, the post that USAC made after my finish on Friday got like 2,700 likes or something, an obscene amount of shares. And our marketing girl was like, "Are you serious? That's a lot. Like, that's really good." And I'm like, "Yeah, so this is the value that I'm bringing to the firm." So, just kind of jokes aside, I think they overall enjoy it, and I love having them on the race cars, and also kind of overlapping my professional work with kind of my personal work, which that being racing.
Right. So I know that you've been around the block in this racing series. Of course, sprint car racing is not all that you did. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you also had a stint in ARCA as well.
Yeah, so my background is mainly coming from open wheel, but I also dabbled in a little bit in 2013. I raced like 7 ARCA races, but prior to that, I also had 5 or 6 starts in a CRA late model. And then also I've tested a couple of times a Formula 2000 car, as I was involved with the Mazda Road to Indy Scouting Combine after I won my USAC championship in 2011. So I know I mentioned this before, but I'm literally willing to drive anything. Um, but I think that's also what makes me so unique too, is because I've been exposed to so many different elements of motorsports and so many different cars, and they all handle very different in their own ways. But I think that also has contributed to my growth and development as a driver, that kind of allows me to take something from one thing and build it onto the next, and just kind of adapt to everything. And I think overall that is what has made me a great driver, or not, I wouldn't say like a great driver, but has allowed me to improve and excel in ways that I have, and that has maybe allowed me to be a great or better driver. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, where are we going to see you now? I know you kind of mentioned it, but where are we going to see you next? In when I know you're going to be at Berlin next week, and of course you also mentioned that you'll be at Madison and when you see these cars. But talk about the rest of your schedule. What do you have? What do you got? What do you got planned on the Silver Crown side? And then we'll of course, and you got a lot of racing planned because you just love racing.
Yeah. So overall this season, I think we'll kind of we'll have about 16 races, which is more than what I've been doing the past few years, but obviously not the most that I've done throughout my career, but grateful to be able to go to and attend the races that we are this year. Like with the USAC Silver Crown car, I'm racing or plan to race all the pavement races, which includes Madison, as I mentioned, on the 24th. We're going back to IRP a couple more times, I believe. Winchester Speedway in July, which I'm really excited about. And then also Gateway. So that will in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis. So that will be really cool, which I've tested there. I'm sorry.
Of course, that's also where NASCAR's heading this weekend.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to go back there. I've tested a crown car there before when I was 16 and when I was racing for Team 6R, my first season racing the Silver Crown cars. So excited to go back there and race and see kind of how competitive we can be, which I feel like we can run up front, but we'll see how it is in race mode there. But it was definitely a fun track to test at. But outside of that, the 500 Sprint Car Tour starting up this year, which is kind of taking over for the Auto Value Bumper to Bumper series last year, being led by Jared from Anderson Speedway. So I know that they put a lot of effort into it so far. I feel like they've done a really great job promoting it. And so we'll get about 10 races in with them this year in the non-wing payment sprint car. That being, as I alluded to earlier, Plymouth Speedway. We're going to Berlin a couple times. There's like 3 or 4 races at Anderson, and then we'll have a handful of races at IRP as well. So looking forward to getting the sprint car back on the track and getting back to Berlin and kind of defending our race win that we had in September there last year.
For sure. All right, Taylor Ferns, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, and good luck in the next few races, and we'll have you on again later in the year.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.